Well, in our top story, the United States will use an open meeting of the UN Security Council today to urge member countries to recognize Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido as the interim president of the country. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo requested this council meeting after several countries in the region and elsewhere recognized the head of the opposition-led National Assembly, viewing the second term of incumbent Nicolas Maduro as illegitimate due to allegations of vote rigging in last May's disputed election. Well, Russia has already indicated that it would oppose any efforts to recognize the opposition leader at the Security Council. Let's take a look.
According to a statement by the State Department, Pompeo is expected to underscore the U.S. administration's support for the Venezuelan people and urge the Council and the international community to uphold international peace and security by recognizing Guaido as the constitutional interim president of Venezuela.
Venezuela, please.
As Reuters first reported, Russia's envoy said they would oppose any such push by Washington and will likely find backing from other Council members.
South Africa's position still hasn't changed. We still recognize the government of President Maduro as chief government of Venezuela. So that has not changed from South African position. As to whether Venezuela threatens peace and security, we'll listen to what Mike Pompeo might have to say.
The European Union, for its part, has called for the start of an immediate political process in the country, leading to free and credible elections in conformity with the country's constitution.
We tried to express a common view from the European Union on that since the beginning of the crisis, and the request is to have an open dialogue in Venezuela, to have a new political process for the organization of credible elections, because we recognize, of course, as a National Assembly was truly elected by the population, we recognize also as president, but we need to have a dialogue to organize credible elections, and that's the next step in Venezuela. So we'll try to express the same view from the five member states coming from the European Union.
While regional countries Brazil, Argentina, Colombia and Canada have recognized Guaido, none of the other permanent members of the Security Council have formally backed his presidency. Sherwin Bryce Pease, SABC News, New York.
Well, we are on the cusp of this very crucial meeting. Let's cross now to our correspondent, that's Sherwin Bryce Pease, who's live in New York for us. Good afternoon, Sherwin. Many of the view that this is a US-backed coup attempt and that Guaido has no electoral legitimacy. How do you think the cards will fall today at the UN Security Council?
Well, I imagine, Kirshni, that the word coup d'etat would certainly be part of the narrative in the Security Council today. Of course, we will initially hear at the beginning, at the top of this meeting, that is about 55 minutes away from the start. We'll first hear from the UN representative, the Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs and Peace Building, Rosemary DiCarlo, and she will give sort of a neutral assessment of where we are in this situation right now. Of course, this has been precipitated by the White House of President Donald Trump formally recognizing Juan Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela. Juan Guaido basically using an article, invoking Article 233 of the Venezuelan Constitution that says the President of the National Assembly is entitled to assume power temporarily if this body rules that the country's president is failing to meet his duties. And, of course, the background to all of this is a disputed May election last year in which the opposition did not participate due to irregularities and certainly being certain targeting on the ground. They stood out of those elections. Maduro won. He was inaugurated on January 10th. And, of course, this became a very real problem for some of the countries in the region. As we mentioned in that report, some of the big neighbors, including Brazil, Argentina, and the like, have already recognized Juan Guaido. The concern we are now seeing from other countries, the European Union, for example, has been a bit on the fence in terms of this. They have said they want to push for dialogue. But, Kirshni, we are now seeing reports that France, Spain, and some other European countries, including the big one, Germany, have issued a démarche to Maduro saying that if he does not call free and credible elections within the next 8 days, then they too will recognize the legitimacy of the interim president, Juan Guaido. Of course, in that piece we played for you a short time ago, South Africa's ambassador making the point here, Jerry Machila, that being that South Africa still recognizes the incumbency of Nicolas Maduro. We will hear similar sentiments expressed by the Russians and the Chinese. Of course, they have invested interests in the oil industry in terms of billions and billions of dollars in Venezuela. So they have a financial and economic interest in how this proceeds. And of course, the background to all of this as well. Look out for words like this is about energy. This is about having access to Venezuela's oil reserves. That is perhaps some of the backdrop that you will hear in terms of the standoff between the United States and Venezuela. And very interestingly also, Kirshni, Nicolas Maduro, the incumbent president, has basically expelled United States diplomats from Venezuela. He gave them 72 hours to leave the country, but of course the United States has resisted. In fact, let me just read you some of the language that the United States has used. We call on all parties to refrain from measures that are inconsistent with the privileges and immunities enjoyed by members of the diplomatic community. The United States will take appropriate actions to hold accountable anyone who endangers the safety and security of our mission and its personnel. So clearly a standoff here. Will the United States just use sanctions to make that point, or are they talking about military intervention? Of course, also critically, Venezuela's military has pledged support to Maduro. So that's going to be the last bastion to fall if Maduro is to relinquish power. Yes. He now has the backing of Russia and China, but critically, Kirshni, also the backing of the military.
And you've actually just preempted my next question, because now that the U.S. has gone ahead and recognized Guaido as president, and this is something that's illegal under the Organization of American States Charter, one wonders how the U.S. administration is now going to follow through on this gambit, or gamble if you want to call it that, in the absence of mass defections in the armed forces. Because like you're saying, we know that Maduro still has solid control of the state organs, including the military.
Look, I think what we're not seeing is the lobbying that is happening behind the scenes, led by the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. But the U.S. administration, I imagine, is working quite diligently behind the scenes to turn countries that are perhaps on the fence, or countries who are not wanting to recognize Maduro. I think what you're seeing now from the European Union, that initially was pushing for dialogue, was to say, hey, let's put a deadline on this. Let's call for elections. They want Maduro to pronounce on elections so that there can be a free and fair process here, and that's how they see this conflict, if you will, being resolved down the line. The problem that Maduro does face is that a number of his neighbors are backing the United States move here. You have Colombia with the U.S. You have Brazil and Argentina and Chile and all the big countries in that region, Canada in the Americas as well, backing the U.S. position. He only has support from neighbors like Cuba and Bolivia. They are very much in a minority. Now let's look at the situation in Zimbabwe as a comparison, Kirshni. If the SADC turned against Zimbabwe probably wouldn't stand a chance. So Maduro has a great deal of difficulty in convincing his neighbors that he is legitimate. And given the United States position here, of course, the United States, one of their big clients in terms of oil purchases, they're going to squeeze Maduro economically, and of course the situation on the ground. There are food shortages, there are health facilities are not running at full capacity, there's difficulty in accessing medicines. So the Venezuelan state could crumble even further from within, and that's, I think, what the United States long game is going to be here.
Sherwin, before we leave you, I must ask, Venezuela has always been a long time a thorn in the side, or at crosshairs with the United States ever since the era of Hugo Chavez. Why ramp up the pressure on Maduro right now? Let's talk about the timing of all of this.
Well, there was a election in May last year, and the opposition didn't participate. And of course, I think people, or certainly the United States, was waiting for the affirmation of that election result in the inauguration of Maduro on the 10th of January this year. And then I think you saw this kind of ripple effect in terms of the United States taking action. This might also be part of the administration's policy of distraction. Of course, there's a lot of bad domestic news in terms of the president losing his long-standing fight with the new Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, in terms of funding for his wall. Of course, the U.S. government has now reopened. One of his close aides, of course, was arrested yesterday and will face charges of lying to Congress, among a host of a number of seven criminal charges. So perhaps this is the art of deflection from the United States, that they will now focus and possibly threaten economic or even military action against Venezuela. But let's wait for Mike Pompeo to weigh in the Security Council. We are literally minutes away from that, and really seek clarity as to how the cards in this deck of cards are going to fall. But I imagine it's going to be high drama. You will see resistance from Russia and China, and even South Africa, that has said they still recognize the administration of Nicolas Maduro, but certainly some high drama expected here in moments to come.
Thank you. That was our correspondent Sherwin Bryce Pease coming to us live from the United Nations in New York, where that meeting is poised to set off in less than an hour's time. We will be bringing you regular updates throughout the afternoon, so do stay locked on to the SABC News channel.